Hey guys, in this video we'll be talking about advantages and disadvantages of owning a home. Advantages and disadvantages of owning a home. In our last video, we talked about advantages and disadvantages of renting an apartment. And today's video, we'll be talking about advantage and disadvantage of owning a home. Now we move straight to the advantages. Now the first advantage of owning a home is privacy. You own your own privacy. No one dictates for you what to do. No one tells you what to do. You are free to do whatever you want to do. So every homeowners out there, they enjoy the privacy that comes along with owning your own home. Because why? It belongs to you. It belongs to you. So number two advantages of owning a home. You can modify it to your own tastes. You can modify it to your own tastes. Now, in our last video during the advantage and disadvantage, we talked about not having a say when it comes to modification and making the house look to the way you want it to be. But in owning a home, you can modify it to your own tastes. The kind of paint you want to use, the kind of design you want it to be, how you want your living room to look like, how everything you can think of, you have the right to do it because it belongs to you. So this is number two advantage of owning a home. You can modify the house the way you want it to be. You can make series of changes, addition, subtraction, and all that to your own tastes. And number three advantage, it increases your credit score and equity. Now, if you've been following through my videos, you understand that credit scores, when it comes to mortgage, matters a lot. In certain countries, they don't joke with it. In certain countries, if you don't have a good credit score, there's a limit to what you can get. Now, building a credit score after you become a house owner or a home owner, it gives you more advantage and more leverage when it comes to going to the bank and pursuing your desire of becoming a real estate agent or owning your own real estate. So it builds up your credit score, your credibility in the financial markets, whereby you will be able to walk into a bank and request for an amount, or you'll be able to walk into a bank and you present a proposal because why? You have a good credit score. And it also gives you equity. It gives you money in the long run because why? The house belongs to you. So whatever comes in belongs to you. Another advantage is a good long-term investment. It's a good long-term investment. Let's take, for instance, you acquire a property and you are living in it. And then after a long period of time or a short period of time, and you decide to maybe relocate or move somewhere else, and then you can actually decide to put it out for rent, or better still, you can still resell it. You can still resell it. That's for the short term. For the long term investment, if you are living, you can put it for rent and then allow the cash flow to come in. You allow the cash flow to come in. And if you build your credit score long enough to be able to get acceptance from the bank regarding proposals of becoming a real estate agent, then you can own multiple homes and then you have a more better long-term investment and a long cash flow and equity. So another advantage of owning a home, you end up paying less compared to renting. You end up paying less compared to renting. Now, when you get a mortgage from the bank to buy your own home, they give you at a certain rate, interest rates, and also there's an upfront payment which you will make. And then based on what you put down, will determine the installment you pay. And believe me, it is far much more lesser than when you are renting. It is far much more lesser than when you are renting. Let's take, for instance, you get a 3-bedroom apartment and for rent, and you're paying €800, $800 or thereabouts. And by the time you go to the bank to buy that same property, probably elsewhere in a well-suited location, and then you make a down payment, 10%, 20%, 15%. At the end of the calculations and everything, you will discover that you end up paying less than what it will go for in the market system when it comes to renting. So you end up paying less installments. And again, another advantage that comes with owning a home, stable monthly payment of the mortgage, especially when the price is fixed. So many people, they get it wrong because why? They are cajoled by offers when it comes to the kind of mortgage system you have to go for. You know, when you go for the proposals, they present before you a fixed mortgage payment or a variable mortgage payment. Now, it will not be on your own discretion to understand and to go for fixed, because when you go for fixed, the installment is always higher. But when you look at that of the variable, for starters, it's a little bit lesser. Now, let's take, for example, you go for a mortgage and then you are expected to make a down payment of, let's use there about 20%, and then the bank will make an 80% deposit to buy your apartment, and then they give you an option. Do you want to go for a fixed monthly payment or a variable? Now, most people, because they look at the option of the variable, that the first installment is always lower, they tend to go for that. If the fixed deposit or the fixed mortgage goes for, let's take for instance, $500, 500 euro per month, the variable will always go for 300, 350. So many people will be cajoled by that and say, I'll go for that pays 350, rather than going for the fixed that throughout the duration of the lifespan of that mortgage, it is fixed. But variable changes as market changes. So if the market tomorrow, if the interest rate tomorrow goes up to 5%, that of the variable goes up to 5%, you end up paying a higher monthly mortgage. And most of the time, the bank does not inform you that it has gone beyond expectation. They just empty your accounts. That's where you see many people, they complain, the bank, I lost my house and all that, because they went for a more juicy offer at the beginning. So you get a stable monthly payment of your mortgage when the mortgage is fixed. When it is fixed. And we also, another advantage is that you get from owning your own home, it gives you stability. To those that are prepared to stay longer in a certain location, it gives you stability. It prepares your mind to build where your home is. So when you get your apartment in a more better location, it prompts you to want to build whatever you are building in that environment by giving you stability. You can still decide to move, even if you want to move, and you can put it for rent or you resell it. These are some of the advantages that comes with owning an apartment. Now, the disadvantages of owning an apartment: you have the high upfront costs. This is the particular area that scares people away. High upfront costs. Now, when you go for a mortgage, definitely the bank would want to know, what do you have on ground? And when the bank, they do more research on you, checking your credit score and all, they will now decide, okay, this is the percentage that you must have on ground before we can assist. Most of the time, they tell you have to have 20% down payment on ground before they can intervene or before they can discuss further on your proposal. Sometimes they might be lenient enough to go for 5%, 10%, depends. But the 10%, the 5% is not cheap. The 20% is not cheap. If you are aspiring to get a home that is worth 100,000 euros and the bank insists you have to have a 20% down payment, you're talking about $20,000, 20,000 euros of 20% from the bank. So if the bank is lenient enough to give you a 10%, you're talking about $10,000, 10,000 euros or thereabouts. And if it's 5% being fair enough, they can give you 5,000 euro down payment, 6,000 euro down payment, or thereabouts. So the upfront cost is always high. So most people tend to run away because by the time the bank gives them the evaluation of what it will take you to own an apartment, then you will conclude in your mind to prefer renting. That has been the case to so many people. Not that the intention of buying is not there, but they get scared when they go through the requirements from the bank. So number one disadvantage is high upfront payment. Most people are not able to meet up with that upfront payment for their mortgage, and then they give up easily. Number two, closing costs. In as much as you are talking about your high upfront payment, we also talk about the closing costs. And the closing cost is also not cheap. It's not cheap because the closing cost comprises of so many things. You have the insurance of the house against earthquake, fire, all sorts of insurance. And you also have the insurance that also has to cover you, whereby if anything happens to you in a way that you are not able to walk, or in the advent of one losing his life and all that, the mortgage closes, which means the house becomes the sole ownership of your beneficiary. So these are some of the closing costs that comes with it. And also the cost of the agency that helps you prepare the document, that helps you get the house, finalize the whole thing. The cost is not cheap. And the change of ownership, the transfer of deeds, and all that, it costs money. It's not cheap. So in as much as you are looking at the down payment from what the bank has told you to get the 10%, 20% or thereabout, aside that, you have your closing costs, and which is also not cheap. So these are some of the things that runs in the mind of so many people. Even though they are willing, they tend to shy away from it. Another disadvantage that comes with owning an apartment: more responsibilities. More responsibilities. You know, when you rent an apartment, most of the time there's a 50-50 responsibility that goes along with it between you and your landlord. When anything faults in the house, or when there's any damages in the house, all you just have to do is just pick up your phone and call your landlord. This is what is going on, this is what is going on, and immediately he comes and fixes it because he owns the property. Now the house is yours, so all the responsibilities of maintenance, fixing of damages, renovations, fixing of lighting and others, all sorts, is your sole responsibility. And it is also not cheap. It is also not cheap because there are some damages that will require professional assistance, and these professionals are not cheap. They charge more when it comes to fixing your appliances. And also there are some rental apartments that the sole responsibility of fixing any damages lies in the hands of the tenants. Same also to homeowners. So these responsibilities are huge and massive, that it takes someone with a clear, convinced mind to pursue through. And another disadvantage that comes along with it: less mobility. Less mobility. Now, because you've decided to own your own apartment and you've decided to stay in that particular environment, most of the time it will be difficult for you to change environment, especially when you get a good job offer, probably in another city, in another state where you reside in. You will not be able to move because by the time you move, you will be considering the cost of you looking for a temporary apartment to stay there, and also offsetting the installment of your mortgage. So most of the time it is very difficult to relocate, to move, because why? You need to consider the cost of living in another city. So we also have the maintenance costs. Like I said before, more responsibilities. If you are living in a condo whereby you have to live with other people and all that, there are so many maintenance costs that comes with it. Especially when you are living in a high-rise apartment, you have to pay for maintenance, cleaning, and all sorts. So maintenance cost is always there. And even in a rental apartment, the maintenance cost is also included in it. It is also included in it. So another disadvantage, lastly, before we go, the property value can fall in the event of reselling. In 2008, when there was a financial crisis, all housing crashed. The prices of housing crashed, and so many people lost their apartment, they lost their properties. Why? Because the market value went down. So there's no guarantee in the long run that the value of the property you bought will increase or decrease. But there's one thing that is for sure: the value remains the same when you maintain the property. If the property is appealing, it can also maintain its value. So these are some of the advantages and disadvantages of owning an apartment. In conclusion, you must not be swayed by these expenses, especially when it comes to building in a particular environment. Renting an apartment is always an option. Owning an apartment is always an option. But the decision always lies in your hands to make. It is always in your own discretion to evaluate yourself, to understand your capabilities and your abilities to handle these burdens. So owning an apartment has its advantages and its disadvantages. You can lose your apartment by the time you default in your installments. You can lose your apartment at any point in time if the right steps are not taken. You can lose your apartment if the right insurance is not being made. You can lose your apartment if you do not do more research before going into it. You will lose your apartment if you cannot ask questions from those who have made it and those who have failed in it, thereby building yourself. So these are some of the tips you will need to know when getting yourself involved in owning an apartment. And it also serves as a means of education, especially when you want to venture properly into real estate and property management. So to learn more, there's a link below. Just click on the link, you get more on mortgage, housing. Until we meet again, like, share, and follow for more.